Today, a Necron player is going to review the new Eldar Codex. It's coming right up.
Necrons!
Nick speaking, and welcome to this video. So today we are looking at the new Eldar Codex. Now this channel is all about Necrons, and it always will be. However, the channel name is Necrons and More. And I do have 6 other armies, including Aeldari, Eldar, Tyranids, Space Wolves, got a Empress Children army, and a Dark Eldar army. And I thought it would be pretty cool to get some of those armies featured on the channel. Now the channel is still 100% going to be focused around Necrons, and I won't necessarily always be playing the newer army on the channel. I might give that to my buddy to play as I play Necron, so at least we can get some different armies on the channel in the battle reports. That is the idea. So even though I have the book, there's a couple of stipulations for me in that, 1, I won't be buying any new miniatures, so I'm only going to be playing with what I've got built and painted, and 2, I won't be painting any of my Eldar miniatures that I have which need painting. So those things aren't going to happen. I'm going to focus my hobby on my Necrons, but I thought it would be pretty cool to get the Eldar on the table, and today we're going to have a look at this new book. However, it did look very complicated. When I first flicked through this book, I was thinking, oh my god, this is going to take forever to learn. Love you. Okay, so we've got the new book, and the first observation, of course, it's very thick. There's a lot of pages in this book. Not only that, but I bought the data cards, and wow, look at that box. There are so many cards. It's unbelievable compared to the Necrons one, but I've discovered there was actually a reason for that, which we'll look at just in a second as I bend my card. Don't do that, Nick. Put it back properly. Okay, so yeah, the cover. I actually really like this cover. I have to be honest, I'm not a huge fan of the Necron cover. It's okay, but it's not amazing, not like my old 3rd edition cover, which got me into the hobby, got me into Necrons. I love that Codex cover. That's okay. This, however, I think is really nice. I like it a lot. Very, very cool. I like the colours, I like the styling, and even Necron Girl saw this book and said, oh, that looks really cool, Dad. So, yeah, thumbs up for the cover. Looks really cool. Now, when we have a closer look inside, which we're going to just flick through the pages and just have a general discussion, and maybe also look from sort of how it differs from the Necron Codex. At first, when I first flicked through this, I was thinking, my god, we've got loads and loads of fluff, which we don't really have that much in the Necron Codex. And I was thinking, well, most of this is going to be fluff. But actually, I soon got past the fluff to, when we can get there we go, to the rules. So the fluff itself isn't actually that much, because half of this is just pictures of the models, and then the fluff, there is some fluff there of course, but it's not like on everything. It's not as in-depth as maybe I thought it was going to be. So yeah, they obviously haven't changed that, and in actual fact the layout of the Codex is pretty much exactly the same as the Necrons one. Now of course the Necrons was the first 9th edition Codex to come out. I was sort of expecting things to have maybe progressed and changed, but it hasn't. You know, everything is exactly the same in terms of the order. There is a few differences which we'll look at when we go through the rules, but yeah, so far I was pretty impressed. So I have the Codex and I've had a look at it. I haven't looked at every single entry because, well, I don't have all of the units available to me to actually play. So I've been looking at the units which I have mainly. Now the rules themselves don't start until page 80, so quite a bit in. but it's clear why this book is so thick. It's because you have the Craftworld rules, the Ynnari rules and the Harlequin rules all in one book, which I have to say I'm really liking. I think it's a good idea just to have everything in one place. Now, we've got the standard sort of Battleforge rules, the match play rules, Crusade rules, the army rules, etc. And everything has a page number reference to it, which is quite useful. And just like all the other codices, you've got like these blocking sides here, you know, which actually say like Battleforge rules or Crusade rules. So it's quite easy to navigate through the codex, and I'm liking that. Now, as I said, if it wasn't for the fact that I already had the Necron Codex, I would find this codex an absolute minefield. If this was your first book, your first introduction to 40k, I can see that this would be a bit of a mission to learn. However, I was able to pick things up very quickly just because A, I was familiar with the sort of layout of the book, and 2, because I'm familiar obviously with how 40k works in 9th edition. So let's just flick through. So first of all, we've got the Battleforged rules, and we have the, well, Asuryani detachment abilities. Now, I have no idea what's going on here. I mean, this is the Aeldari Codex, which of course they've name changed already from Eldar because of copyright, I assume, IP stuff. But why is this not called the Aeldari detachment abilities? Why have they introduced this new word, Asuryani? It's rather odd. So it's an Asuryani detachments gain the leader of the Warhost ability, which basically means you can have a maximum of 1 alt-up model in each Usari detachment. But it does say also Craftworlds unit. So why is this not called Aeldari and then Craftworlds are the keywords, and then you can have like your Samhan, your Bautan? Why is it called Asuryani? Let me know in the comments box below if you know. I have no idea. I mean, I know I've skipped a couple of codices, so maybe I've missed something along the way, but that just seems really, really odd to me. Now, of course, we've got the Harlequins in here, and it even mentions Drukhari as well, so it seems like you can have what they call travelling players. So if your army is battle-forged, 1 Harlequin patrol detachment in your army can have this ability. A detachment with this ability is ignored for any mission pack rules that require every unit in your army to have at least 1 faction keyword in common. So that's really good. Obviously they've dealt with the new updates. And then we go into the actual craft worlds themselves, and this is one thing which has changed. So when you go to, for example, the first page is Oathway, and they've actually got the attributes, or the dynasties, the attributes for each one. But not only that, you get the warlord trait, and you get the relic, and you get the dedicated stratagem, like all on that entry, which I'm actually quite liking. I could see a slight disadvantage because in the Necron book, when I'm looking, I can compare the different, say, warlord traits for Novok, etc. But here, you can't do that. You have to go to each individual page. However, I think overall, it's probably better that it is in one place because it just separates them. So you've got the traditional craft worlds, Oathweight, Aliotic, Bautan, Ayandin, Samhan, and then you have far-flung craft worlds, which we'll look at in a second, which is basically the custom craft worlds. Now, I was particularly looking at the Samhan craft world because, well, I used to play the Samhan army. That's what my army was based around, which is basically lots of grav tanks and jet bikes. I used to call them the IDICBeer. Actually, my channel name is based around my Eldar craft world, the IDIC craft world, infinite diversity and infinite combination. It's the Vulcan philosophy from Star Trek. I'm a huge Star Trek fan, and I thought it matched the Eldar very well. They live a long time, they have pointed ears like Vulcans. So yeah, infinite diversity, infinite combinations. When they took the jet bikes out of troops and put them into fast attack, that's where I started to have a few issues playing Samhan. And then they made the Samhan attribute, as they're now called, where basically you can re-roll charge rolls made for units with this attribute. Now my Eldar, my Samhan host, it wasn't about charging. That was like the last thing on my mind. It was about speed, and it was about shooting. So to see the Samhan with just that extra bonus for charging seems really, really odd. Now I appreciate obviously the units maybe have changed quite a bit, but I'm talking about from when I used to play them. That just doesn't make sense. And I've been looking at a lot of the Craftworlds, and I don't think there's many in here which would actually match my particular style of units that I have in my army. Just on a side note, I've got a horrible mark there on my codex there. It's like a patch. The pages weren't stuck together. I think it's just the print. But yeah, I nearly took it back. But in my old days when I was younger, I probably would have done because I was really fussy. But now I'm thinking, oh well, there'll be another codex in a couple of years anyway. So let's have a look at the custom Craftworlds. So there are a whole host of far-flung Craftworlds available. There's 2 pages worth. Unlike the Necron one, where you have to choose one from here, when you do you can choose one from this side. You can choose any 2 from anywhere, it seems. I think there might be a restriction to maybe one of them where you can't choose 2 traits, apparently, just reading the first paragraph. But the ones which really stood out to me, especially for my particular army, was Hunters of the Ancient Relics, where whilst the unit with this attribute is performing an action, that unit can shoot without that action failing. So yeah, jet bikes, doing an action and then being able to shoot still, or if you're maybe Shining Spears or Swooping Hawks, that sounds really good to me. So you could have your Shining Spears, so a unit of, not Shining Spears, sorry, beg your pardon. I don't actually have painted Shining Spears. I've got Shining Spears, they're not painted. I know Shining Spears are really good this edition, but as I said, I'm not going to be painting any miniatures because I've got a lot of Necrons to do. Anyway, I was talking about Warp Spiders. So yeah, units of 6 Warp Spiders via Deep Strike, maybe do the RND action, and then of course they can still shoot. So I'm liking this one. I think this works really well. Now the other one which I thought was pretty good was Children of Prophecy. So each time a psychic test or a Deny the Witch is taken, you can re-roll all or any dice rolls of a 1 or 2. That's really going to help make your psychic tests and your Deny the Witch tests work. And I'm liking that, especially as I tend to play with a Seer Council. I've got Warlocks and a Farseer on jet bikes because it's like the Samhan theme. I do have other themed armies, and from the Necron, from the Eldar Codex, but Samhan was one of my main themes that I had. So yeah, the far-flung Craftworlds, they actually look slightly better to me personally than the other ones, mainly because of the units that I have. But like I said, that's just from first glance, it's not necessarily from a deep dive. So moving on, it's got about the Aeldari, which I don't really know too much about. I know they had, there was the Gathering of the Storm where the Aeldari came in to play. It's got like an example patrol detachment for Aeldari in here. And then it goes on to an example army where you can have the Usarani detachments, the Eldar detachment, and then with a Harlequin's patrol detachment. So just showing you how it all works, which is nice to see because it is rather complicated. Then it does the Harlequin detachment abilities, and whilst I do have 30 Harlequins, they're not painted, and I have none of the new sort of Harlequin vehicles and stuff. So Harlequins aren't going to be a thing for me in this army. Then we have the stratagems, which are very similar type of thing to most stratagems in most books, as there is a good amount of them, mainly because it's covering 3 armies. So I mean, the stratagems in that data card box, I mean, there's a lot of stratagems, but I was discarding most of them because, well, I wasn't playing those armies, so it's not as bad as it looks. The Dire Avenger one looks pretty decent, allowing you to select 1 Dire Avenger unit from your army that is below its starting strength that unit can choose to gain. That's pretty good, although it is 2 CPs, and there's more to come on Dire Avengers in a minute, so keep watching. So that's the stratagems. Let's go past them. And then, this is the interesting bit, Exarch powers. And actually, they've moved all the Exarch powers to their own pages. So rather than the data card itself having the Exarch entries, you've got a dedicated section for them, which just cleans up the data card, which is quite nice. And it's got all of the abilities for the Exarchs all in one place. I think that's quite a good idea, and it's easy to see things, you know, quick. So I like that. I would like the binder in here, and they probably do that in the special edition codex, but hey ho, not in this cheap one. Cheap. Yeah. Okay, so then we have the pivotal roles, which are basically for the Harlequins, so we can skip past that. There is the Usuriani chapter approved rules and the Harlequin chapter approved rules, which are basically what was in the latest mucked updated thing. And then relics. So we have quite a few relics there. As I said, the dedicated relics for the Craftworlds are previously in there. I was looking at this for my army. I think potentially this one, the Sunstorm, where it's for an Usari bike only, but the bearer can move 20 inches, and the bearer has objective secure, which is pretty cool. So I have a Farseer with objective secure. I'm liking that. So that's probably the one I'm going to use to start with anyway. So those are your relics. Then you have the Warlord traits, the standard Warlord traits as such, not dedicated Craftworld ones, and the Harlequins have their own Warlord traits. I was thinking, which one did I choose? Oh yes, this one here. Seer of the Shifting Vector. So whilst the Warlord is on the battlefield, then every time a command point is used, that's you or your opponent, every single one which is used, you roll a dice, and on a 6 you gain 1 command point back. So it does actually say a d6 for each command point spent. On a 6 you gain 1 command point back. Now obviously the Necron one, you can only get 1 CP back a turn, and it's actually, I think, in the main rulebook that. So I think, for example, if someone uses a CP which is 2, you roll 2 dice, even if you get a double 6, I think you only get 1 CP back. But still, I thought that was pretty good, because CPs are flying all over the place, and it's not only your CPs, it's your opponent's one. So even though it's only on a 6, I thought that was quite a good one to have. Just allowing you to have all of those extra stratagems available to you. The psychic disciplines, we've got the Harlequin ones, which are very similar to what they used to be by the looks of it, with Vow of Tears, Fog of Dreams. We've got the rites of, the runes of battle, which are the warlock ones, which are looking very similar to what they used to be. I say what they used to be 2 editions ago. Then you have the runes of fate and the runes of fortune for your Farseers, and nice to see that Doom and Fortune and Guide are in there. And then we have the Revenant discipline, which I'm assuming is Ynnari stuff. And then we have the Crusade rules. Now I don't mind the... Alright, Mum? It's alright. Then you have the Crusade rules. Now, I don't mind Crusade rules being in here. I wish it wasn't right between the match play. I'd like to see the Crusade rules maybe at the beginning more, maybe right at the end, but sort of having it in between the match play rules just seems a bit odd to me. But there you go. I don't play Crusade, so that's probably why it bugs me. So we go past all of the Crusade rules and we come to the data sheets, which we'll talk about later. But first of all, let's go to the back of the book. So at the back of the book, you've got the Harlequins reference, you've got the Asarani reference, you've got the glossary, and then you have the Harlequins points, and then of course you have the Usiriani. Why is it not called Aeldari? No idea. You have their points values, and well, this is where I went fairly quickly. Not necessarily to look at the points, but I was really curious to see if the Windrider jet bikes, had made it back into the troop slot. When I looked at the troop slot, I got rather disappointed because Dire Avengers are no longer troops. Now, I don't have many troops painted. I have 10 Guardians painted, and I have 5 Rangers, Pathfinders painted, although I didn't actually paint those, I bought them painted. And that's the only troops that I got painted, apart from 10 Dire Avengers, well, 12 Dire Avengers. And that's my troops, because of course my troops used to be jet bikes. So jet bikes came out, and now Dire Avengers are out. So troops, all we've got is the Corsairs Void Reavers, whoever they are. I've never even heard of them. Obviously, I know that Corsair was a thing in the past, but when did these models get introduced? I mean, I have no idea about those. Guardian Defenders, of course, I know. Rangers, fine, and Storm Guardians. Yeah, that's annoying, because that really limits me. I can't even take a battalion detachment, because I've only got 2 troops choices now. Arguably, maybe I could use my Dire Avengers and just like proxy them as Guardians or Storm Guardians or something. Probably Guardians, but I don't really want to do that. So that was a big disappointment to me, to be fair. Of course, you've got the usual sort of 9th edition Codex theme, where the Elites slot is absolutely jam-packed. The Fast Attack and Heavy is sort of about average, and of course an absolute bunch of HQs. Very interesting, and it's really tough for me now to make a battalion detachment. So I'm probably going to have to go for Spearhead or Outrider detachments just to get my things to work. But yeah, even like the heavy support might be a problem, because I've got 2 Fire Prisms, a Valcom, War Walkers. You know, I've got a good amount of stuff, but it's just getting them into a list. It's going to be interesting. Now, we've got the weapon profiles, so let's have a look at these, in particularly, obviously, from a Necron point of view, because we know that the Necron damage is rather random. There's a random amount of dice and random damage dice. So the first thing that actually caught my eye is, well, Eldar are still pretty random. You've got the missile launcher, which is strength 8 -2, but it's still D6 damage. One shot, D6 damage. The Bright Lance is still one shot, but it's D3 +3 damage, which is where I think our big guns should be, the Doomsday Arc. I mean, a Bright Lance, I mean, a Doomsday Cannon's got to be the equivalent of a Bright Lance. So that, you know, that is something which I picked up on. However, there's quite a few D6 damage stuff. The Corsair Blasters D6. Fire Dragon guns are D6 +2, which obviously is much better than D6. There's a minimum of 3. They are melter guns, close range melter guns, so I suppose they could be, you know, less random. The D cannon is D6 +2, and also On a 6 you do a mortal wound, as well as normal damage. The fire pike is d6 plus 4. The fusion pistol d6 plus 2. Then the heavy wraith cannons are d3 plus 6. And then you've got like a plasma grenade3d3. The prismatic cannon, which is from the fire prism, that is 2d3 damage, which actually, 2d3 is pretty good. You know, our Doomsday Arcs are 2d3, that's a minimum of 2 damage. It's still random, but not quite as bad. Nothing worse than rolling a d6 and rolling a 1 or a 2. If you roll 2 d3s and you roll 1 and a 2, well, yeah, you could say hard luck, but, you know, it doesn't seem so bad because you had 2 chances. Then the pulse laser is d3 plus 3. You know, it's pretty clear that the Necrons need an upgrade on our weapons. That should be happening, you know, in those balancing sheets or somewhere, FAQ or just something. Just change our damage, please, and potentially even just change the amount of shots that you have. You know, let's make that damage rather than a d6. Shots. Rather than a d6 shots, let's just make it 2d3 shots. I think that would be a lot better. So yeah, damage. You know, they've got better damage in terms of less randomness. Still random, but it's not as bad. And then, of course, you've got all the data cards for all the different units, of which a lot of them I can't use because I don't have them painted. However, I do have a good amount of models painted. Certainly enough to do a 2,000 point army. We're going to start with 1,000 points. I'm going to play the Eldar at 1,000 points, and Richard is going to play the Necrons at 1,000 points. It's going to be a lot of fun, so stay tuned for the battle report. I really hope you're looking forward to seeing some of my other armies on the table, whether I'm playing them or somebody else is playing them and I'm playing Necrons. This should be a lot of fun. Now, if you want to see some of my other battle reports, then there is the playlist for you to check out.